Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty Roundtable Radio Talk Show.
All right. Happy to have you along, my fellow Americans. Sam Bushman live on your radio. Hard-hitting news the networks refuse to use, no doubt, starts now. This, my fellow Americans, is the broadcast for, what is it, April the 24th on Monday in the year of our Lord? No, sorry, it's the 21st, not the 24th. What am I thinking? April 21st in the year of our Lord, 2024. This is hour 1 of 2, and the goal always to protect life, liberty, and property, to promote God, family, and country, to reject revolution unless it's a Jesus revolution. Then we're in because we follow the Prince of Peace as we use the supreme law of the land and the incredible checks and balances brilliantly put in place by our founding fathers. Why do I think it's the 24th? Oh, I know why. Because I've got some events on the 24th I've been working on. And then you get on the radio, I was like, hey, man, it's the 24th. Wait a minute. No, it's not. Wow. The 20th yesterday was Easter. The day before, the 19th, what do you call it, Easter Eve? Anyway, the culmination of an incredible special week, in my humble opinion. Did you have a weekend that focused on Easter, the real reason for the season? The resurrection, I should say the birth and the resurrection of the Savior Jesus Christ. What an incredible opportunity to promote God, family, and country, right? That's exactly what I spent my time doing, man. I kicked off the whole weekend early on Thursday by watching the latest episodes of The Chosen, and then just rolled into a great God, family, country weekend. It was phenomenal. And so I have a headline. Here it is. He is not here. He has risen. He lives. Hear him. And we need to really think about that in this wonderful season. A lot of people think of the Savior on the cross, and no doubt that was a suffering that was necessary. He asked for this cup to pass from me, but not my will, but thy will be done, Lord. And he wanted to do what his Father wanted him to do above all, and he delivered on that. And I bring that up because the delivery culminates in the resurrection of Jesus Christ, and that's where I'd like to spend a little bit of time. He is not here. That's what Mary was told. Very interesting that Mary didn't recognize him, thinking he was the gardener, until he said her name. And the sheep know the shepherd's voice, right? And we need to learn to hear him. We need to learn to understand his voice and get close to the Lord and stay there, as Dr. Bradley likes to put it. We really need to focus on these things, ladies and gentlemen, because if there's one thing that I believe could make a difference in this country, it's repentance and turn to Christ. There's a ton of other things you could point to. The target's rich, or it's a rich target environment. There's no doubt about it. But at the end of the day, you know what? I believe that our relationship with Jesus Christ and our relationship with our family members, those relationships matter most. And if we keep the commandments of God, blessings are promised. It's very simple. Dr. Scott Bradley, welcome to the broadcast. Happy Easter to you and your family, sir.
Well, thank you, Sam. I, again, would return those wishes to your family and indeed to all those that have, we all should be giving consideration to these whole things. These are pretty momentous things, and they're kind of given kind of the short end of the stick, if you will, all too often nowadays. We get all caught up in, sports events and, economic things and recreational things. And, well, you've got to have time to sharpen the saw, but sometimes I think we've completely eliminated the, the things of greatest moments. So, yeah, good reminder. We've got to spend some time.
And we can't even sharpen the saw because we gave all the sharpeners away, right?
Well, it's interesting. Now, just a second. You brought up an interesting point that ties into the right to keep and bear arms, and you say, huh? Well, the Philistines in ancient Israel wouldn't let the Israelites have, things of sharp implements and things that would sharpen those implements.
Stones and such.
Well, the problem was, honestly, that they were concerned that they'd be able to build a sword or something. And
when the government's afraid of the people, we have liberty. When the people are afraid of the government, we have tyranny, right?
Well, that's right.
And that's kind of where that comes from.
It was their effort to disarm the people and keep them in subjection or from being able to rise up against them. And I mean, anciently, you can go back and say, the right to keep and bear arms. Well, yeah, they didn't have muskets, they didn't have M16s or anything like that in those days, but they had, harvesting tools and hoes, and I mean, they could have been used as weapons, and they did not want these people to have the means to protect themselves. And I think that it's just, tyrants have always had a desire to subjugate people, and they did it whether it was keeping them from having a sickle to harvest their wheat,
And they always will.
Sure.
That's something to realize and remember, too. They always will. That's not going to change.
Well, and by the way, you saw Trump put out a Second Amendment task force thing that Pam Bondi's working on, and I hope it doesn't go south on us. I mean, if you've read, I'm just going by memory now, Sam, so maybe somebody can look this up and do a fact check, if you will, on me. If I recall correctly, this Second Amendment executive order was 14206. It sticks in my mind, and so maybe while I'm jabbering away here, somebody can look that up and see. But I think everybody ought to read it. But it basically says they're going to look and see any of these executive orders and things that have gone on, particularly focusing from January of 2021 to January of 2025, that adversely affects the Second Amendment. Now, you might see that overlays very nicely in the Joe Biden administration, and everything seems like it's really supportive of the Second Amendment. And then it gets into the devil's details in the very end of it. Talks about, well, this doesn't affect anything that has to do with the legal creation of laws that's happened, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, all that kind of stuff. So it's a little bit problematic, in my opinion, in that if they find laws that have been created to destroy the Second Amendment, they ought to point those out. But the concern I have is that both Trump and Pam Bondi are fixated on red flag laws. And
well, they are. And it's under the cover of Donald Trump telling you that, hey, man, I support your Second Amendment rights. It's not about this. It's not about that. And a lot of the statements that he makes are great. The problem is they conflict with some fundamental conflicting statements that he's made as well. So where he really stands, we don't rightly know, do we, Doctor?
Well, that's the problem. It's that I hearken back in memory to 2016 September, when Obama's Civil Rights Commission came out with a 296-page review of religious liberties, in which they tried to define religious liberties as narrowly as possible. By the way, we ought to talk about that decision in North Dakota, I think it was, about the abortion stuff for businesses. Anyway, I get diverted so easily. But anyway, and it had to do with religious liberty. But at any rate, 2016, Obama's Civil Rights Commission tried to define civil rights in terms of religious liberties as narrowly as possible to prevent them from being brought into the marketplace and overshadowing some of the newly created government, quote-unquote, rights that require others to fulfill. Like,
those are called privileges.
Based on gender and race and stuff like that. And so I hope
perverted divide and conquer tactic under the guise and the lie of unity. And that's kind of the problem. And now they're saying, hey, Donald Trump's doing a great job. He's really opened up to where evangelicals get into the White House. He's got a religious kind of focus and everything else. I think that's good if it's genuine. But, when you bring the Paula Whites and some of these other people that are like, hey, you send your money to the Lord, but they give you their address, it kind of derails things a little bit. But I want to highlight a couple of things about Easter. Like I say, my statement is this: he's not here, he is risen, he lives, hear him. Pope Francis died at age 88. Speculation's already all over the place, swirling around who will become the next pontiff to lead the Catholic Church. Francis died in the early hours of the 21st, I guess, hours after he met with Vance and others and, in the White House. I guess the day after Easter, he had been hospitalized with double pneumonia and all that kind of stuff. So R.I.P. to the Pope, and, it's a very sacred thing for many. And he used his final Easter address to call for a Gaza ceasefire. Dr. Bradley?
Well, I think we all ought to be calling for something like that. But
amen.
It's interesting to me that there have been some of my good Catholic friends that have had great chagrin with some of the things that this current Pope has been engaged in, and
oh yeah, he's been more pro gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender than any pope before him, right?
probably more ardently a communist than any pope before him. I mean, hey, I'm not a Catholic, so I don't follow this closely, but some of my friends that have been very, very discouraged about the whole stuff. But the fact is, you're right. They're going to have an election now, and they're going to see where they bring the next guy in from, and so that's something to kind of watch.
We got a quick break, but I want to say this though. I don't agree with a lot of what the Pope's done. Neither do a lot of the Catholics. But I will say this: when he calls for a ceasefire, we agree. Hang tight. More in seconds. Liberty Roundtable Live.
Why don't we say to the government writ large that they have to spend a little bit less? Anybody ever had less money this year than you had last? Anybody ever having a 1% pay cut? You deal with it. That's what government needs, a 1% pay cut. If you take a 1% pay cut across the board, you have more than enough money to actually pay for the disaster relief. But nobody's going to do that because they're fiscally irresponsible. Who are they? Republicans. Who are they? Democrats. Who are they? Virtually the whole body is careless and reckless with your money. So the money will not be offset by cuts anywhere. The money will be added to the debt, and there will be a day of reckoning. What's the day of reckoning? The day of reckoning may well be the collapse of the stock market. The day of reckoning may be the collapse of the dollar. When it comes, I can't tell you exactly, but I can tell you it has happened repeatedly in history when countries ruin their currency.
Step into the boots of the American West with Range Magazine, where grit meets grace. This is a front row seat to the stories, struggles, and triumphs of ranchers, farmers, and stewards of the land. From jaw-dropping photography to no-nonsense reporting, Range brings you the untold tales of life on the range. Whether you're a city dweller with a cowboy's heart or living life where the pavement ends, Range speaks to the soul of the West. Subscribe today at rangemagazine.com.
This is a battle between truth and deceit, a battle between forces that would enslave this country in darkness, and between a media that wants to present you with the truth. We are being censored. America's news outlets no longer provide the truth. 90% of news outlets in the United States are controlled by 6 corporations. The mission of the Epoch Times is to chase the truth, to ground all statements in fact.
TheEpochTimes.com. All right, a guy by the name of Eric Schmitt writes an article for The Blaze, and he says this: why Easter Monday should be a federal holiday, and I'm fighting to make it happen, he says. What I find interesting about that is Joe Biden literally created a, perverted Easter scenario where he promoted these transgender whatever identification or whatever day and this kind of stuff, transgender promotion or whatever it is. And so he's saying, hey, we need to make Easter a sacred holiday about the Savior Jesus Christ. And, very interesting. Where do you go with this? They're going to make every day a holiday, Doctor.
Well, yeah, that way we don't have to work as much. Workers of the world unite. It's interesting, by the way. Did you see that article in WorldNet Daily that the Democrats honor their presidents for Easter except Biden? I mean, they had JFK and some of these other ones that, kind of a happy Easter meeting, Kennedy and Carter and Clinton and Obama, but they left Biden out. Now, Biden, he professed Catholicism, didn't he? I mean, but he was pro-abortion, which seemed like a contradiction in their religious tenets, but... Anyway, yeah, there's, this Easter thing. Wasn't Biden the guy that walked around shaking the Easter bunny's hand or something and seemed to
the guy's been in
lost
disgrace. But,
there you
go.
I don't know. But he did do Transgender Visibility Day for Easter Sunday.
Yeah.
That's a kind of a perversion.
On one hand, he's a clown. On the other hand, very dangerous. Indeed, but our prayers are with the Pope that died. I know that it's a very complicated, private replacement situation at the Vatican, so our prayers are with that. But when we talk about this idea about, hey, using his final address to call for a ceasefire, I agree with that. And I don't really think that we should have federal holidays, personally. I mean, you can have a couple of them maybe if you want to say, okay, Christmas and, 4th of July or whatever, but, and I don't even have a problem with Easter per se. My problem is when you get government the ability to create a list of holidays, you interfere with the private business, you interfere with states, you interfere with local, you interfere with people's private lives, it just goes on and on. So I'm pretty hesitant on these new holidays, although Easter would be one of my favorite if we were to have any, Doctor.
Well, yeah, I agree. You look at government dinks around with almost anything they've set their mind to, and I don't think that they had federal holidays back in the day, like 4th of July and all that. People celebrated on their own. There were community things that happened, but to say the federal government...
if we had that much liberty, we could celebrate every day, Doctor.
You're right, and I don't know if you remember the John Quincy Adams address that he gave about the 4th of July and Christmas being kind of the manifestations of Christ's whole administration, if you will, if you want to call it that. I mean, how the 4th of July brought forth a kind of a fulfillment of what Christ started. If you go and look at Luke chapter 4, for example, and there Christ is in Nazareth, going back to his hometown, and he gets... they give him Isaiah to read, and then he brings out his purposes to liberate the captive and heal and everything. It really is.
It's quite telling, and that's documented very well in The Chosen as well, where they literally riot and freak out about, that he ties that to him scripturally,
Sure.
and all that kind of stuff, and it's very interesting. I bring it up just because I think people need to be able to be free to choose what they want. I don't really think we need these holidays for all these different things. I just think it's kind of a waste of time. But Donald Trump went off on Easter, too. Did you see this?
I don't know. Going off on it? Tell me what's going on.
The headline says, Donald Trump posted a lengthy and, what do you call this? Angry rant, they call it. A lengthy, angry rant against his enemies on Easter. He was slammed for politicizing the Easter holiday. Now, I've got to dig into this because I don't know a whole lot more about it, but I know that's the deal, and they say this. Happy Easter to all, including the radical left lunatics who are fighting and scheming so hard to bring murderers, drug lords, dangerous prisoners, the mentally insane, and well-known MS-13 gang members and wife beaters back into our country.
Well, Sam, that's this kind of harkens to the
concept. The next
concept.
words are Happy Easter.
Yeah. Yea, verily. But the fact of the matter is, though, that think about this. You can politicize almost anything.
Right.
And if you make something a federal holiday, and somebody, Joe Biden's going to politicize the LGBTQ WXYZ thing, and Trump's maybe going to blast his political enemies and then say Happy Easter. I don't know. I mean, I think that sometimes, there's a little bit of private, we the people kind of stuff that needs to go on. We need to honor the Lord with our lips and with our hearts and not be far from him. And that, to me, is a concern that, you put these things down as some kind of government-mandated largesse. I mean, think about this. Hey, you guys, we're going to give you a thing to do your Easter thing on, and suddenly it's a political thing, and I don't know. I think that, let me just give you an example. We used to live on the East Coast, around New York City there, and some days... Yeah, well, it was a very interesting experience, and some of the people there are some of the most delightful people on the earth. I'm confident of that now. But some Monday mornings I'd be going to work, and the highways would be absolutely desolate of people. There was no traffic, and I'd think, okay, what holiday am I missing today? And it's very interesting. A lot of the ethnicities that are kind of in the melting pot around New York City have their own holidays. They don't have to be federal declared holidays, but they take them off. They don't go to work on those days, and it's kind of like, holy cow, maybe I should pick a religion that's doing the holiday today. I mean, because some days I'd be going to work and I'd think, good grief, nobody's going to work today. Why am I doing it? But those ethnicities would commemorate their own, celebration of whatever they were thinking about. And you didn't have to have a federal holiday to do that. You took a vacation day if you wanted to, And so,
well, let me tell you how you know that Donald Trump's comments are, here's what the headline says. Trump's happy Easter message filled with vengeance and vitriol. Hey, Trump made Rolling Stone just like Sam Bushman did.
Well, it's sad that there can't be a little. I mean, you've done this thing recently about having a little more civility, haven't you? I mean, that's kind of one of those things that you kind of trumpet if you can. Trumpet, no. Anyway, I just sometimes think, why do we always have to turn it into a ain't it awful and you're all going to die?
We don't, and that's kind of the problem with this. So, when Donald Trump posted a lengthy, angry rant against his enemies on Easter, that's what the mainstream press is writing. Now, I've looked at it, and all I can tell you is this. What about a Clarion call for civility, Doctor? What about a take a break from the... Donald doesn't need to attack his enemies, and they're all wrong, and the Democrats are what he says, and, the Republicans are a lot that way, too, that he ignores. And, we go on and on with this division. But why can't we, like the Pope, just say, hey, let's call for a ceasefire, let's have less war, let's have more peace, let's turn to Christ, let's remember the reason for the season, let's have a clarion call for civility, I just don't understand why. What? I mean, I get that Trump wants to attack his enemies, but using that time and that address, what good does that do? Except for foment greater divide.
Keep the context of what you're doing. And I may be leaping again around, but I'll tell you what, Trump said he wasn't going to be a war president, but he's started a number of wars since he's got in there, and we are kind of engaged in some things that we should not have been. Not kind of, we are definitely neck deep in it. But there's a report out that Trump vetoed the Israelis attacking Iran, and they were going to do it with the support of the United States. We put a carrier group there for that. We've got aircraft. We could land, well, not just land, base out of Israel in support of this thing. And it's good that he vetoed it. Okay, don't get me wrong. I'm saying, we dodged World War III because it sounded like Israel was going to do a whole out long, just World War III starting kind of thing, a Pearl Harbor on Iran. And Trump said, no, don't do that. Now, it's some of the people that are normally considered to be hawkish, like Pete Hegseth and Tulsi Gabbard, advised against him doing that. Okay, and so he listened to their counsel, which I'm glad for. But here's my concern about that. If he was able to squash it for now, because they were supposed to do it the first part of May, maybe first week or something. I don't know exactly when. I didn't have those insights. But the fact of the matter is, if he can squash it, he can green light it. So if in fact at some point Israel does launch and the United States somehow is participatory in that, the natural conclusion will be that Trump greenlit it and authorized it, and therefore the United States is neck deep in this thing. And I'm very concerned that type of connectivity will happen when Israel does launch, and I'm pretty confident that they will launch at some point. Every war they get into is preemptive. They start every war they're involved in. But at any rate, that was something that I have grave concerns about it because of maybe some strange reasons.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Sam continues to issue a clarion call for civility. Callforcivility.com to learn more. I'm just saying, I'm sticking with that, man. I wrote an article in 2015 about this. Literally 10 years ago almost. A couple of days, it'll be 10 years. And I'm telling you, we've seen nothing but the divide grow much greater. We can turn to Christ this Easter, ladies and gentlemen. He is not here. He is risen. Hear him. We can follow his teachings and keep his commandments. And, oh, man, the blessings we're promised are unreal. They're incredible. Let's look forward to a bright future as we celebrate. He is risen.
Pursuing liberty, using the Constitution as our guide. You're listening to Liberty News Radio.
News this hour from townhall.com. I'm Rich Thomason. The sound of church bells echoes across Rome following word of the death of Pope Francis. A Vatican statement reads, at 7:35 this morning, the Bishop of Rome, Francis, returned to the home of the Father. Correspondent Charles de Ledesma says the 88-year-old pontiff was just recently discharged from the hospital in Rome following a lengthy stay.
Francis suffered from chronic lung disease and had part of one lung removed as a young man. He was admitted to Gemelli Hospital in Rome on February 14 for a respiratory crisis that developed into double pneumonia. He spent 38 days there.
And the White House is extending its condolences.
In a message posted online, President Trump wrote, "Rest in peace, Pope Francis. May God bless him and all who loved him." Vice President Vance met briefly with the Pope on Sunday to exchange Easter greetings. The 88-year-old Francis offered the Catholic Vice President 3 big chocolate Easter eggs for Vance's 3 young children. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt told Fox News, "It's a solemn day for Catholics around the world."
White House correspondent Craig Clugston. No classified information was shared. A snippet of a White House statement regarding another Signal chat controversy involving Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, allegedly sharing information about pending strikes on Yemen with his wife and others in a group chat. The White House labels it a non-story. A slow-moving, intensely powerful storm system brought heavy rains, large hail, and tornadoes to parts of Texas and Oklahoma, Illinois, Missouri, and beyond over the weekend. There were numerous high-water rescues, trees down, power outages across a vast area. The fierce weather left at least 3 people dead. The skies are clear and temperatures cool for the 129th Boston Marathon, now underway. On Wall Street, the Dow down 659 points. More on these stories at townhall.com.
Hi, it's Mike Gallagher. I've been thinking, why does it feel like losing weight is harder than ever before? With mixed messages, fad diets, the quick fix injections, even magic coffee. I mean, it's overwhelming. Most people are exhausted trying to fight a battle they cannot win. If you feel this way, trust me, you're not alone. I used to feel that way too. But let me tell you, it's not your fault. Your body is working against you, and the longer you wait, the harder it gets. Do what I did. I called PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition 3 years ago. I lost 53 pounds. I feel terrific, and I've kept the weight off. Make the phone call that can change your life the way it has changed mine. They won't let you fail. Call 855-696-2020. That's 855-696-2020 to schedule your consultation. The first 11 callers who mention the word healthy will get 2 free weeks added to their weight loss package. Call now, 855-696-2020. Mention the keyword healthy to get 2 free weeks, or visit them at myphdweightloss.com, myphdweightloss.com.
Looking for an IT partner that truly understands your needs? Managed IT Services is the answer. We meet with you regularly to discuss your goals and form a tailored technology plan. Our customers have called us a trusted advisor who delivers. When it comes to IT, we do it all. Firewalls, cloud storage, server migration, and more. Say goodbye to long-term contracts and hello to a team that earns your business month after month. Call 801-706-6980 now and let Managed IT Services transform your IT experience.
Have you ever had great honey? No, I mean really good, all-natural, raw honey? Well, now you can, thanks to localhoneyman.com. We can ship out our locally made honey all across the U.S. So don't worry, you won't miss out. Plus, Local Honeyman has so many different flavors, like Utah Wildflower, High Desert Delight, Happy Valley, and Blackberry, just to name a few. So purchase your delicious raw honey today at localhoneyman.com.
Attention collectors and savvy investors. We are excited to announce a momentous evolution in our journey. Introducing Free Water Coin Company, formerly known as Rust Coin and Gift. This rebranding takes us back to the very roots of where it all began, Free Water, Oregon. It's a tribute to the legacy of Al Rust and a celebration of 3 generations of dedication to excellence in the world of coins and precious gifts. Al, Brian, and Jake Rust standing strong through 64 years of service. Discover a world of exceptional service at Free Water Coin Company, your premier destination for genuine, honest money and precious gifts. Under Brian's expert guidance, Free Water Coin Company, building on the legacy of Rust Coin and Gift, continues its tradition of trust and excellence. Visit us at our Provo, Utah location. Explore our treasures online at freewatercoinco.com or call us at 801-377-1574. Free Water Coin Company, where your future is built one honest coin at a time.
Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty Roundtable Radio Talk Show.
All right, back with you live, ladies and gentlemen. Sam Bushman, Dr. Scott Bradley on your radio. Hard-hitting talk, always at your fingertips. Check out lovingliberty.net. Incredible nationally syndicated talk radio and more. They got an iPhone app, an Android app. Download and listen to your heart's content, or listen online at lovingliberty.net. All right, Dr. Bradley, I got a question for you. Do you know about the slow movement?
That's kind of my mental capacity, I think. I don't know. Maybe you're talking about something
No,
else.
come on. No, listen, man. It's called the slow movement, also known as the slow living movement. It's a, quote, cultural shift towards slowing down life and life's pace, etc. It's a very interesting movement. I've been kind of studying, and I'm kind of interested in this. I know people think it's kind of hippie and kind of whatever, but I really think that there's something to this. How fast is fast enough? How soon is soon enough? How, you got to really ask some of these questions. This slow movement encourages individuals and communities to prioritize quality over quantity and to cultivate a more meaningful and balanced lifestyle. What do you think of that?
I think that most modern society really does kind of live in the fast lane all the time, and we try to go faster and faster all the time. I mentioned earlier how we'd lived on the East Coast, and you get in some places like New York, and it's kind of like everything goes on steroids in terms of fast and furious, But you go down into some of the areas in the Deep South, and I was stationed in the Deep South, 55 something years ago. And it was kind of like a slow drawl. Some of my good friends came out of Appalachia, and they were good old boy kind of, hillbilly guys, great guys. But the fact of the matter is we do have different paces of life in different parts of our nation. And so maybe we could learn something, and maybe hypertension would diminish if we slowed down a bit, stuff like that. I
bring it up because it's interesting to me that if there's one aspect you could change, it would be how fast people drive in their cars. Now, I know that sounds kind of intuitive or counterintuitive or whatever. It's like, how could that make such a big difference? But I really think how fast we drive in cars relate to this. Now, this slow movement spans many aspects of life, including food, including travel, work, lifestyle. There's key components to this kind of slow movement that they talk about. One, they call it slow food. This originated in response to fast food and commercial agriculture. What about sustainable? What about local farms? What about, you don't need food to whatever. You got to just have food to table, farm to table kind of an idea. And slow travel, rather than rushing from, quote, one tourist spot to the next. What about slow travel, which encourages travelers to immerse themselves in the local culture, interact with the local people, take time to relax and appreciate the surroundings, not just flyover country? It's like, hey, I've been to that place 10 times for business, but I've never seen the sights in the place because I'm just too busy. Slow living, ladies and gentlemen, it encompasses making deliberate choices about how we live, focusing on, they call it living sustainability, reducing consumption, and spending time on activities that actually bring true, meaningful fulfillment. It can include all kinds of things like work-life balance, mindfulness. The list goes on and on. They say slow work. This is interesting. It advocates for a healthier work-life balance. It highlights the importance of flexible working environments that adapt to people's personal needs rather than the fast-paced culture of, you know what, you got to have that to me before I even ask for it mentality, right? Slow design. This focuses on creating products and services that relate to your connection of consciousness and slowing down a little bit. Slow media, for example. This encourages people to consume media more mindfully, to be aware of the time and the type of content you're focused on. It's basically a whole philosophy to say, hey, can we talk about this, or do we just have to have a fast soundbite? Does everything have to be fast, fast, fast? Mindfulness, the idea is to be present in the moment and fully engaging with, listen, your current activities that are in front of you, not online, not virtual, that are in front of you. Real people, real. Then they talk about sustainability, prioritizing the environment, which I support as long as it's not government sponsored. If people want to protect their environment, we should be good stewards of the environment, right? Now that can go off the rails if you're not careful, but the point's well taken. Connectedness, building strong relationships with community members, family, friends. Quality over quantity. The slow movement is not about doing everything slow. Rather, it's about finding the right pace for different aspects of life to increase well-being, connectedness, and so on. Anyway, I find that a very interesting movement, Dr. Bradley, and I realize that it can be taken over by the environmentalists. It can be taken over by the wrong people. But the idea is to say, hey, let's just disengage for a second. Let's wake up in the morning and prioritize our lives. And when we prioritize our lives, let's what matters to you? What are your core values? What are your governing values? And then you start to say, okay, what's most important? And we wake up with a gazillion things we have to do, and we run around all crazy. And man, the second we get up, we're already late. We're already behind the 8 ball. We can never. What if we just stop all that? And this has to do with the economy and getting and spending as well. What if we just don't need to wake up and think, how can I get and how can I spend? How can I be everywhere that I need to be all the time? How do I deal with all these conflicting places I'm supposed to be and do and think? And why don't we just slow down and say, hey, it's Monday, the day after the resurrection of the Savior Jesus Christ. What's the most important things I need to accomplish today? And yeah, I get that you have to do some things for your work, and I get that life tends to creep and grow, and a lot of it you don't have control over. I get that. But we've never had, in the history of the world that I know of, more free time than we do today. People have way more free time than they ever did. And I know we feel like, oh man, we're working ourselves to death. We are to some degree, and we can stop it. We can work smarter, not harder necessarily. We can, prioritize our tasks. I like to look at it as, hey, prioritize your tasks for God, family, and country. And the rest will take care of itself. You have to work, you have to do all those things. I bring this up because I think my clarion call for civility and this slow movement really go hand in hand, though. Hey, if you don't get a lot done today, but you read your scriptures and learn more about Christ, and you say your prayers and turn to God and repent and ask for his guidance and protection and help, and then you look and say, hey, Lord, guide me to where you need me today. I'm an instrument in thy hands. I'm on thy errand. And, how can I serve people and bless other people's lives? And then, hey, you do the things after that are necessary to keep the roof over your head and all that kind of stuff. I kind of wonder if we could take our days and kind of format our lifestyle, reboot, reschedule. COVID gave us the opportunity to do that. We all stayed home for a long time, and I'm not really a COVID fan, but I am saying there can be nuggets of truth that you can take from that and slow down a bit, have a clarion call for civility, and say, what should I be spending my time doing? And that's really the deal. I realize that this movement could be taken over by hippies and everybody else, but if you slow life down, and I find that driving in your car seems to relate to everything else, traveling, airplanes and cars, and if we would slow down our travel, I think everything else by nature would slow down, Doctor.
Hey, Sam, take a deep breath and take a chill pill, man. I mean, come on. I was thinking during what you were speaking about, back in the 60s, there was a guy named Charles Kuralt that did a little segment, I think it was on CBS, On the Road with Charles Kuralt. And he went around and he saw, the byways and highways of America, and he engaged with people doing things that, were kind of off the beaten path, and him and John Steinbeck's book, Travels with Charlie, kind of, I guess you could say, inspired me, if you will, to kind of take that segment of my life. I left home when I was 16, started traveling the country, and it was the slow way. I had a motorcycle. I went by thumb. It was a slow pace, if you will. But I went and discovered America, and I fell in love with America. Honestly, I mean, the places I went, most people would never ever spend any time in. I mean, I could tell you stories all day long, literally. I got a million stories, but I discovered the greatness of America was in its people. The principles they believed in, the great Christians. I mean, people had invited me to dinner in the evening after I helped them in their field when I rode by on my motorcycle and saw they needed a little bit of help there, and they invited me to dinner. I stopped and helped. I don't know where in Mississippi I was, and it was a dark Mississippi night. I guess you could write a story about that. And I heard some people needed some help building a church, so I spent the night there and helped them the next day building a church. I mean, these kinds of things, taking a chill pill, taking a deep breath, and kind of soaking in the ambiance sometimes is really a good thing. And I fully support this kind of concept.
Just leave it to Liberty Roundtable like, let's skip the break, because then we got to go fast. We got all kinds of,
Yeah.
I'm just telling you right now. See, isn't that how we live our lives, folks? You wake up with an alarm clock, wham, wham, holy, get out of bed, and you're already behind the 8 ball. It's crazy. Can't we slow down a little bit? Now, what about getting rid of daylight savings time? Getting up with the sun, going to bed with the, we can do these things, and our lives would be so much better for it. You wonder how much disease we would get rid of, how much health we would bring back to people and to the nation. When you're at work, it's just like deadline, deadline, deadline. We're not meant to be in a constant fight or flight scenario, Doctor.
Well, we shouldn't be, but unfortunately we've kind of adopted a lifestyle and adapted to it as best we can. But I think human nature really does have kind of a rhythm to it. And some people, I got one of my daughters, for example, she basically early to bed, early to rise kind of thing. She likes to watch the sunsets and, be on the trail early morning to breathe the air before it gets all stale, and I think that brings a measure of peace to her because she's got a frenetic job, that is just really kind of demand. And so it's kind of nice to catch your moments of tranquility while you can early in the morning, or late at night. I mean, as the sun goes down, whatever. And I think our, if you will, a biorhythm, and I don't know if that's the correct term or not, but a biorhythm would be that we have a cycle.
That's right.
Yeah, and if we kind of would adopt something like that into our lives, I venture to guess that we probably would have some more tranquility and maybe even some more time for loved ones and contemplative thought about things that really matter instead of...
Yeah, if we slowed down a little bit, would it change the divorce rate, for instance? Would it change parents, children having parents, actually a father in the home? Would it change, how we look at things? And I get that we need to work. I get that, work is important. But, the Japanese culture have taken it so far to where, hey, if you're not 100% successful, you got to commit suicide mentality. That's on the extreme. Americans are not far behind. And we've got to really kind of look at that and say it's important to work. I get it. By the sweat of your brow, should you eat your bread? That's why I work 6 days a week. But I don't think I need to work as fast as everybody else. It's like, hey, you know what? If I don't get to this till tomorrow, it's okay, right?
Well, it is, and I think about my grandfather, who was a carpenter from the time he was in 8th grade until the day he died, literally. He worked in his workshop until he passed away that morning. It's interesting to me, you could kind of set your clock by, he left for work at 7, and he walked to work where he was pounding nails, building houses. He'd be home at lunch, noon. You could plan on a noon lunch with him, and at 5 o'clock he was back home, and he was done and with the family from 5 on. I mean, that was the kind of the lifestyle of the day. But today it's kind of like 24/7. You got to work on the weekends, and of course our economic challenges.
Well, otherwise, you're not a real player, Doctor. If you don't do that, you're not really a team builder.
It is that oftentimes, but businesses oftentimes. They assume that you are owned. I mean, this idea of slavery should have gone away with the 13th Amendment, right? But there's the demand of the job, and you better be available on Sunday afternoon to take a business call. I mean, and it's so amazing to me that we've seemed to have lost the reason for life. I mean, we don't live to work. We work to live. I don't know.
And sadly, that's exactly what I'm trying to basically talk about and speak against. I always joke to my family, and I'm half serious and half joking. But let me kind of explain the concept. I always tell my family I think they ought to make the speed limit 35 everywhere. You can't go faster than 35. Now, I'm not really for taking away people's freedom. Don't get me wrong. So I'm not really for like making a mandate or anything like that. But I'm saying if society, went down to 35 miles per hour, pretty soon everything in life and society would change. If you're going to drive across the country, for instance, you would need to stay in a lot more hotels. You'd need to stay, and you can say, well, Sam, that's a big waste. And my response is, no, it's not. How fast is fast enough is the point. So you say, well, Sam, we can't go back to 35, my heavens, where it normally takes me, 40 minutes to get there at 90 miles an hour, 80 miles an hour. I can, you're going to tell me it's going to take me, way longer to get there. Triple, Sam, double at least, if not triple. And I say, that's true. But on the other hand, you got to ask some questions. How fast is fast enough? Like if we improve the roads and get bullet trains and, instead of going, well, the speed limit's 75, so we go 85 because 10 miles and over. 10 miles over, that's not a big deal. And then, okay, and we start going like the Autobahn, hey, 140 miles per hour and stuff. What's going to happen to life? Are we going to slow down in the rest of our lives? Or is it just going to be even faster? Or, I take information overload. How much information do I need? Do I need more? More? No, what I really need is less and more refined, and I need to prioritize my life a little bit. I need to join the slow movement and step back and go, hey, there's 1,000 facts out there today. How many of those facts do I need? 10 of them? Wow, that's how the commandments work. You only need 10 of them, plus the 2 great commandments, 12 of them, and in society we got, how much is enough? How much do I have to get? How much do I have to spend? How fast do I have to go? And you kind of ask all that, and then you back into this discussion and say, what if I went on a trip? I've gone to places, for example, New York or Houston or different places, and I've met with the people that I'm supposed to meet with and done all a fly in, do it, and fly out and leave. And you got this flyover country that I never got to visit. I never got to see. I get to say one of these destinations, like I've been there 10 times for business, but man, I haven't really seen the place. I haven't spent time in the place. But if we were to slow down our travel, I think a lot would change. And so I always, whenever there's a problem, I say, hey, if we were going 35, that wouldn't be a problem. And people always laugh and think it means nothing. It's not a fact as really as more of it is symbolic. And you say, well, Sam, we can't take forever like they did in the olden days. No, in the olden days, they averaged, say, 20 miles per day, doctor. And in this scenario, you'd go 35, almost twice that in an hour. So in 10 hours, you'd go 350 miles. And I know people would be like, well, Sam, we could be 420 miles or whatever the number be, or 500 miles by then, at least 600 almost. Yes, it's going to slow things down some. But you got to ask the question is what matters the most? Is it to see people? I bet you that most people fly in, do a business meeting and leave, and they have family or friends in that general area, and they don't even take the time to go see them. Sam, anyway, so do you think slowing down travel is the key here?
Well, I don't know if it's just travel. I mean, certainly our information overload is a big issue too. And
yes,
I think about, Route 66, that kind of leisurely path across America. I mean, that's what I did back when I was a kid. I mean, followed the byways that were different than the things. Now, I'm old enough that I remember, and no freeways. There was a Pasadena freeway that was built in the 30s back in California, but that wasn't me. But what I think in my hometown and my community, those that are familiar with the Utah area, there was no freeway north to south. I-15 didn't exist. If you lived, my hometown was Bountiful, and if I wanted to get to Provo, let's say, I went down State Street in Salt Lake City with all the lights. And it was, a total, new lifestyle when they opened freeways. In fact, I had friends that I kind of ran around with that sometimes broke down barriers on the freeway to be the first one to drive on it, as they before they really officially opened. But yeah, that we've got that Route 66 concept of going to America. I mean, you're there. I mean, why don't you experience it? And like I say, the people that make up the land, and I don't know what it is right now, because you're right, we do zip by and give very little thought, and the things of America are lost because we're losing our connectivity with our fellow Americans, I guess. So yeah, slowing it down. I don't know as the traffic speed is. I mean, I go I-15 right now, and it's a big parking lot. I had to speak down there the other day. And
well, the reason I bring up travel like that, though, is I think it's a whole expectation of a trip. Is your goal to fly 2,000 miles or fly 500 miles and just drop in, do whatever you're going to do, and get the heck out, fly in one day, fly out the next. And, how fast does our life need to be? I think that a lot of people would work from home. If we had 35 miles per hour, people would work from home because they're like, hey, it's too far to go to work the way I, normally do or whatever. And I think, the old style was work from home. The old style was run the farm or do whatever business you did, either at home or if you lived in town and you ran a store or a blacksmith shop or you were a cooper, a barrel maker or whatever. You'd basically walk from your house or whatever, or maybe take a horse into work or whatever. People just did everything just slowed down in a very nice kind of way. And I really think we need more of that is all I'm saying. And, how to achieve it? There's a lot of different aspects that could achieve it. But I guess I think it starts in your heart and in your, hey, is driving 35 miles per hour really that slow? I mean, I guess compared to modern times, yes. But I don't really think it's that slow at the end of the day. They used to go, like I say, 20 miles per day. Now you're talking about almost double that per hour. I mean, one day, if you, slow down, consider 12 hours a day driving, but 2 hours of it is stopping and, whatever. 10 hours, 350 miles. Is 350 miles in a single day enough? Would it used to be 20 miles average in a day? Just say 25 to make it easy. You're talking about 14 times faster. But no, that's not enough, doctor. Now we got to have the government invest in bullet trains so we can get there faster, buddy. You got to go from Los Angeles to Vegas like instantly so you can gamble, then instantly so you can get back and have no traffic because you're busy. You see what I mean? It's crazy.
Well, I think that deep breath and chill pill it goes far deeper than just travel. I mean, I know you're using it as a.
I'm using it as an analogy, though, to make the point. But you're correct. It relates to everything. It relates to going to bed with the sun, or when the sun goes down, or whatever, and not spending hours and hours with fake light. It relates to waking up in the morning and deciding what you're going to do with your time. There's a gazillion aspects to it, and I'm just using this travel to make the point because it's so easy to see how quickly and how instant everything has to be with travel. So I use it really as an anecdotal example more than the only thing to consider, right?
Well, yeah, if we take time with our spouse, with our children, with our grandchildren, with our friends and neighbors. I mean, when I was a kid, and I'll just go back when I was a kid, everybody played outside. If your dad was mowing the lawn and you were with your buddies across the street and there was, but nowadays, the streets are vacant. My wife and I talk about this often, and I think it's because of the television sets that are occupying us and the electronic devices, computers and handheld devices. People have just hunkered down and bunkered up, and there's nobody out enjoying the sunshine. I mean,
compare it to a book. You read a book and it takes, say, 13 hours to read the book or something. You watch the movie in an hour and a half and they say, let's go. We got things to do, places to be. Come on. And I agree that it's all aspects of our life. I don't think travel's the only one. But to me, it's the easiest to see and the easiest to compare. When you go to a place for business and you fly in and you go to the, quote, resort you can't leave, and then you fly out and you've never even seen the place. I've visited all 50 states, but I know nothing about any of them. Wow, that's not impressive to me. So, folks, it's time to slow down. It's time to have a clarion call for civility. It's time to know that he lives. And consequently, he will redeem us. He is risen. He lives. Hear him. I wanted to bear testimony this day about Jesus Christ, and that's how we try to live our lives. We follow the Prince of Peace. I've been pondering on the many names used for the Savior as well. We gotta dig into that sometime, Doctor. Thank you so much. We appreciate you.
All right, you guys all have a wonderful week.
Dr. Scott Bradley, freedomsrisingsun.com. We're nationally syndicated by the Loving Liberty Radio Network, lovingliberty.net. Spread the word, share the love, and God save the Republic of the United States of America.